So
Thank
going
you.
going back to your comic book work, I have to say, and I'm just guessing here, but I think you are a big fan of horror, aren't you, Rodney?
I am.
Just a
I am.
guess.
I'm a huge horror genre fan. I haven't seen a lot of urban horror done the way that I would have liked it to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it's kind of campy. It's either one extreme or the other. It's either dealing so much with social issues that it doesn't feel like genre, or it's dealing so much. They put comedy in it and not like within the scene. Like it's not taking itself seriously, so it's hard for me to take it seriously. I think, guys like Jordan Peele are exceptions to that rule, and there are other
Oh, hell
people
yeah.
over the last few years that are, challenging that idea, and I'm trying to be one of those people as well. But I'm talking about my formative years where you had like Blackula and Blackenstein.
Oh,
And
Vampire in
those are
Brooklyn.
weird, right?
those movies, those movies were kind of like, when you go to see The Exorcist and then you go see Blackenstein, there's a difference, and it's a little different. And so I wanted to make things that felt like I was taking them with the same amount of seriousness that was in craft that was placed in The Exorcist. And I love William Peter Blady's writing and William Friedkin as a director. I want to do that same treatment to urban horror in the same way that, other ethnicities are treating their work. And so, and even in Korean films, like I love the Korean horror films.
There's a
they're
Train to
great.
Busan coming out. Did you hear about that?
I saw that on Netflix.
There's a sequel to Train to Busan coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Very soon.
Yeah.
Sequel,
That's
And
great.
for the monster movie I'm writing, Jordan Voight Roberts, shout out to him.
That's what I'm about
He's
to
a
ask, yeah.
huge Korean horror film fan, and I had at least 100. I had to watch as research at least 100 Korean horror films.
Oh, wow.
Wow,
That's
that's
a
a
lot.
lot of
That's a lot.
hours. You might speak Korean.
No, it
during
is.
research.
No, the thing with Jordan was he would say, "Man, there's so many films I want you to see," and I'm like, I can't buy all these films. And the next day, this box shows up and it's full of horror films, and so I'm watching one after the other, and I get the idea of how it's so much craft, and it's a different voice and it's a different tone in how we make movies in America, and so all of that sort of inspired how I do what I do when I approach horror. But I always love the idea of stakes, and it's nothing more. Life and death are really the two extremes of stakes. Like you can steal money from someone. Sometimes in the superhero world, death is like somebody come back.
Not really.
Mm-hmm. Low risk, yeah.
But come back. You can, virtually, and they'll figure out a way, and it'll be great. But still, death isn't really permanent. But in horror films, the better ones for me, death is permanent and it matters. And if you really find a great protagonist and you can emotionally invest in that protagonist, you don't want to see them die. So it almost feels like this, if you can let your imagination suspend or let your imagination to that place and you care about this person, the horror comes from you not wanting to see anything bad happening to that person that you care about. And so I always wanted to one day get to a place where I could create characters of color who had the similar depth and weight and dimension to their character, so that when they're being chased by a zombie or bitten by a vampire or whatever, there's an emotional connection that you're making, not just the horror part of someone's being ripped apart, you just don't care. That you're actually making an emotional connection with the thing that's horrifying. And so that's the
Okay.
So I want to say that I really appreciate what you just mentioned about taking horror seriously, and it's not like Blackula back in those days that it's sort of a joke. Now that I realized it, like because again I recently reread your Falcon books, and in the Blackheart arc, the ending of that arc, it had a very beautiful ending with like a redemption story, and I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming at all, and it really comes into focus with after what you said. But one thing I wanted to talk about in your horror inspirations is clearly you, or maybe it's just me, that you have one particular favorite horror monster. It shows up in
the teeth. The ones with the teeth.
Yeah.
Rings a bell.
Yeah.
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 Something you did recently.
A lot of that.
You kind of like them.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I'll tell you why. When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money. And in the summer, they would get this. There was this guy in my hometown, and he would get a school bus, and he would take us to the movies. And one of the first movies I recall seeing were the Hammer movies, the Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee vampire movies.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a profound kind of effect on, it wasn't just the vampire part, but it was sort of like you would have a carriage going through the woods, and there would be wolves running next to the carriage.
Oh, hell yeah.
You would go into Dracula's castle, and it was everything. It was
the atmosphere.
It was yes, very good. It was the atmosphere that was connected to it. That wasn't just about the horror, but it sort of set the stage of intrigue to get you from, you're going to this thing, but it's like going into a haunted house in a amusement park. You get in, the doors close, it's dark, and then you start seeing stuff, and it's not like you just get to the scary part. It's not like a lot of horror films today, it's just all jump scares, and they use sound to do jump scares.
Yeah, you get tired of those easy.
Yeah, and so this had more of a sense of intrigue, and the person who's in the carriage is looking outside and is like, oh shit, it's wolves and shit running next to the carriage. And, it's like, wait a minute, where'd my driver go?
Yeah.
And,
the
horses are on their own, riding up to Dracula's. Yeah, bats and all kinds of stuff. And it created sort of an atmosphere and an environment where horror could happen, so that by the time the horror happened, it was the appetizer for the horror.
Yeah,
and
you prep it.
Again, those earlier movies that I referenced that I wasn't as much of a fan of, but I watched them because that was all I had. I wanted to create something that had that same sense of atmosphere, but in a city. Like, could you create the same environment from those movies and Salem's Lot and Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles and Richard Matheson's Night Stalker episodes and just different things that sort of fueled me? They all sort of had that common theme of creating a world where the horror is existing. It's not just the horror existing in a world. It was so many other things that were coming into place to make it feel like it was important. And like I said before, stakes, no pun intended for vampires and stakes, but there were stakes to the life and death and being an immortal. And then taking my imagination one step further, it was like, all right, oftentimes when the vampire is immortal, he makes it seem like it's cool. He's just running around trying to get blood. That's his only goal. He wants blood. He gets to live forever, and he says really cool stuff. And sometimes he wears leather, and they go to the store. They see leather outfits, and they're karate, and they do all kinds of stuff when you're a vampire.
One of your vampire characters in Killadelphia is like that, isn't it? Isn't she?
Yeah, a little
leather
bit.
Wearing, does whatever
bit,
she
yes,
wants. Huh?
But hers
a little bit. Okay.
Hers is intentional, and it's an act of defiance. But for me, how could I dial it back to the early stuff that I loved? And like I said, take this world that I know, take this world that I love in a genre space, and put the two together, but still make underneath of it, because you're an immortal and because you're a vampire, you don't lose those human connections. Because you want to drink, because you need to drink blood, it doesn't take away from. And the thing with Killadelphia is, I wanted, what happens when you take people who are part of that aspect of America that don't feel like they're part of the machine of America, and all of a sudden you give them perspective and immortality? What does that do to your mind? It's almost like broke people when they hit the lottery. Like, if you haven't been socialized to $10 million, you're a kid in a candy store, and pretty soon you're going to be broke. And there's this running thing of people who hit lotteries going broke, even if it's a tremendous amount of money, because they don't know what to do with it, because they've never made an emotional connection to being wealthy. They're just looking at the money like, I can get stuff. So what happens when you take someone who has basically given up on life and they're surviving until they get to dying, and you say, all right, we've taken death off the table and we've taken survival off the table. And oftentimes I think people of color, survival is our reset. We're in a place where we want to live because there's a threat to your culture so much from the outside that there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to feed your family. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to care for your kids in the way that you see on TV and send them to the best schools and buy them the best things and go on vacations and all of those things. It's just this idea of hustle. We're hustling all the time to get to a place. What happens if you take that away? What if you take all of those fundamentals away? Now what do? Now how do you fill up that void in that time? For John Adams, it's we're going to create a new society. That's something.
Hold on, wait. I'm having you line this up. Okay, before we get into Killadelphia, tell us about Killadelphia. What is Killadelphia about?
Killadelphia has 3 entry points. It is the story of a father and a son who are estranged and have some bad stuff between them, boundary-wise, that makes it hard for them to connect. It is the story of a former president who has gained immortality and basically feels as though he can make America great again if he goes back to the principles that the founding fathers had. But he's also wrestling with sort of being forgotten by time. Like for the famous founding fathers like Washington and Jefferson and others, he sort of isn't given that same shine that they're given. So there's a thing of I can make up for that and I can actually be better than all of those guys. And then he's in a marriage where his wife is saying, well, if marriage is till death do us part and we're not going to die, we need to kind of adjust this relationship. And marriage in and of itself is sort of patriarchal. And she's a little salty because in the world back where they came from, women were, subservient to their men. They couldn't vote. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that. And now I'm in a place where I can do anything I want to do. So to a husband who's used to that other thing, he wants the wife to be what he wanted her to be. And she wants to be what she wants to be. And he wants to do something so big that he can kind of curry favor and gain her affection and acceptance and respect. So there's that story. Then there's a story of a kid, a former kid who was kind of fell between the cracks. And as I was saying before, was given immortality, perspective, and has now trying to wrestle with it and find purpose to what immortality is. It can't just be following someone else. It's like I did that when I was a human being. It's like I was in America and I voted and I did all this other stuff and I kind of didn't live the life that I wanted to live. And now I've got this other thing and I can do anything with it. But yet I'm still kind of following a guy and it makes no sense to me. How can I make my own life? How can I take control of my own life and be free?
Now, when I was reading Killadelphia, I saw that in the president's John Adams. And what I saw is 2 struggling narratives is that there was sort of the concept of white guilt, juxtaposed with Black elevation and equality, and that's how many of the vampires were seduced into it. And it's these running themes, and then there's a secondary theme that sort of comes up that sort of creates a pyramid where it's the rejection of the white savior. Can you talk about how those things create this pyramid that helps the first arc sort of just feel compelling?
We've all kind of seen that white savior character, and I remember this movie, The Serpent and the Rainbow. And I really dug that movie. It was about voodoo and Haiti, but the guy at the center of it, the guy at the center of it was the white guy. The doctor was the star of the movie was the white guy, but he's around all of these Black people, and they know everything about voodoo. He knows nothing about voodoo, but he's sort of the protagonist of the entire movie. And then he sort of loses his way along the way because he doesn't know what he's doing, and then ultimately he figures it out and he becomes a hero. That typically that's the way that story's told.
Yeah, that narrative's been too overused unfairly and necessarily, and
I wanted to
tiresome.
Yeah, and I wanted to do something different in the sense of saying, okay, you're the guy with all the toys. You're the guy that's been around for a couple hundred years now. You're the guy with the plan. But the people who have to exact your plan and have to go about the steps of making your plan work, what if they don't fall in the line? What if they say, hey, wait a minute. We don't have to do that. Why are we following you? You know, why are we doing what you say? Why is you gave us all of these things, but to follow you is sort of its own form of enslavement. And we don't have to do that. And so why can't we just be free? So to your point, when you talk about, I don't want to give away what the end of the book is, but when that thing turns around and that ideology sort of falls on its own face, and the characters that aren't of that that thought process kind of take onus for their own destiny, it sort of goes in the direction I would like it to go versus the direction I've seen my whole life that it's gone.
Right, it's a very strong ending.
Yeah.
So now I've seen in other interviews you talk about because Killadelphia has ended its first arc with the 6th book, and it's going to the 7th book. And there's a lot of things that are sort of set up. But I've heard you in an interview say you have 5 different arcs set up for Killadelphia.
I do. Yes.
Can you tell
I have
us?
5, and
where are we going?
I'm playing with the 6th. I'm playing with the 6th. It's man, I can't tell you but so much because if I say what's at the front of my mind, it's going to give it all away. It's like,
we're not going to tell anybody.
I don't have to read that book. I think you're in a place now of okay. The path we were on is now gone. We have to find another path. And what are we going to do? Now what do we do? We've gotten rid of a big bad. We've gotten rid of a threat. On this side, we have to figure out how we're going to move forward. His son now without a father to guide him, and he's sort of taken on his father's responsibilities and that thing, but he's still wrestling with, I'm not my father. So that imposter syndrome and that sense of, can I walk in his shoes? And that doubt, that self-doubt that comes with that. There's one character wrestling with that. Then we've got another character that is like, okay, we tried it his way. Let's try it our way. There's another way we can go about this that's a tad bit more brutal and a tad bit more straightforward. And with the other character, he's trying to make sense with, again, where do I go from here, but in a macro way. Like, if I truly have power now, how far can I take that power? Because there's a magic element that's in the book.
That's my next question. Yes.
Yeah, there's a magic element there. Can that take me beyond the ability to do things? Can it take me to a place where I can go places? Can it take me someplace where I can, a vampire is basically a shell with a soul kind of trapped in it because it's immortal. And what if I could detach myself from that? What if, my soul could travel? What if I could do other things?
Okay, I got a question. Before you explore that, I want to frame this in a question. So now, I've heard many times, even in this interview, you mention a lot of your inspirations are Stephen King works, the Sandman works with Neil. Those authors, they work within sort of the unofficial sort of Cthulhu mythos. And I want to get that, Fred. We got the Cthulhu right there. Got the Cthulhu. Yeah.
To just to interrupt for 1 second.
Go ahead.
That character, that word that you just used, is in a book. Not the Killadelphia book, but there's another book that is attached to the Killadelphia world. Spin-off of Killadelphia.
No, okay.
There is exactly what you just said. Yeah.
Does it start with an N?
What you just said. I can't say anything else, but you said words, so you earned the right. You earned the right for me to tell you that.
Okay, then I won't say it. Then I won't say it
with that word.
Okay, all right.
Got the bingo.
Guys, yes, there's a magical book, Cthulhu. Read Killadelphia. Yes, the dreaded, and I'll stop right there. Okay.
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 I did blank.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's, oh my gosh. Because that's what I was thinking the whole time I'm reading the book, and I'm seeing this book, this unnamed book, and you know, and then and we're dealing with sort of like a sort of deep, it's very grounded horror. But the beauty of it is that even though it's so grounded and it deals with very topical issues and political issues, it has these hints of cosmic horror.
Mm-hmm. It's not afraid to go there.
It's not afraid to go there. So it's I felt the first book of Killadelphia, it was the first art so far. It's very structured, but put in the African American context, and it's very unique for that. But it's like a bag of marbles, and then like you just sort of pour the marbles out, and then you introduce what you don't know. So then you're like, oh man, it was a very straightforward situation, and then by the end, how do we get where it could go anywhere? And
well, the thing that you said and the observation that you just made, how many times have we seen stories where whatever the bad thing was, it was just in the hood, you know, for some reason it was on that block. And that's it. He didn't have the ability. If it was a vampire, he wouldn't go to another neighborhood. He was just in your neighborhood. And, like whatever the threat, whatever it was next door, and he never even thought about going to another neighborhood. He was cool being in next door. And so my thing was, in a way, not even in a way, it makes you less human. Mm-hmm. And the idea and the scope. It's like, how many movies have you seen or story? I haven't seen many where coming out of any African American community or any community of anyone of color, there are apocalyptic implications within that thing that don't involve New York or California or DC, or it seems like when aliens come to attack, they come to the city, or bad guys come, or vampires come, or whatever comes, it comes to the place that we look at as being the important place, and it talks to the people that we consider to be important, not to regular folk.
Is that why Philly is the setting of this is very major
Philly
event?
Sort of fit. If you know anything about Philly, it has a unique relationship with history, and it has a unique set of circumstances it's going through as well. So for it to have the Liberty Bell and the Constitution and all this other stuff,
the original,
it has all this other stuff too. Yeah. So it has all of these things that to me made it kind of cool to mix together, because on one hand, it was the idea of what America could be, and then the reality of what America is walking with it at the same time. Mm-hmm. So to me, Philly was a great place, more so than, I come from the other book. Well, I can't tell you that part either. But Jason would be very upset if I told you that other part. So, but Philly was the perfect setting for me to fulfill both desires of a world that involved politics and the idea of America, and a world that's struggling.
Now, you mentioned a name, and that was one of my next questions. You mentioned Jason, as in Jason Sean Alexander. He's the artist that we know from Spawn. And you and he have linked up to create this amazing, beautiful book. And a lot of the artwork I saw, it was like photorealistic level artwork. And I'm like,
beautiful.
Yeah, it's like this guy is cranking this out for a comic book. This should be framed.
Crazy.
Can you tell me about the mashup and like how you guys found each other to create this book?
Yeah, it's funny because I just did a Zoom with him a moment ago for this Comic-Con thing that he just did. Jason and I met. We were hired. I was hired to do an interview with him for an art book. I don't know why they asked me, but someone asked me, and I met Jason, and I did the interview, and we sort of hit it off from there. And for the next couple of years, we would just hang out every once in a while. We'd go to dinner and just talk. And we always talked about one day doing a book together. Mm-hmm. And so I would pitch him things because I'm a writer. And he would say, no, for 2 straight years. He was the girl that you want to go on a date with at work, and she just keeps saying no. But she's nice, and y'all get along, and you kind of friendly.
We're still friends.
So, we're still friends. We go to lunch every day. And every 6 months ago, you test the waters, and you say, hey,
Not
How
yet.
about now? No.
How about
Okay,
now?
all right. You go away.
I'll
and then
catch you
try
later.
again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You just keep trying. That's Jason.
Uh-huh.
And so one day I pitched this idea to him. He goes, that's kind of interesting. So I'm thinking he's going to go out with me now.
Ooh, it's not
I
enough.
got him. I'm going to reel him in. And he said he liked the idea. And I've been burned so much by him saying no that
You're
I
just
throwing
throwing
it
it
out.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
like no big deal.
He's like, she ain't going to come. You know, she's not going on a date. She's going to stand me up. And so eventually he called me and he said, that thing you were pitching me a couple of weeks ago, do you have it on paper? And I said, not yet. It's just in my head. He said, why don't you show me something? So I sat down and plotted out the whole arc of what it could be, what the Killadelphia world would be. And he loved it. And so he had the relationship at Image because he was doing Spawn at the time.
Right.
And he took it into the powers that be. They dug it as well. And Killadelphia lives.
Okay. Talking about Killadelphia living.
Mm-hmm.
Killadelphia is about to make it to the screen. Where?
Also,
yeah. What service do you think? You said you work for HBO. I know probably for other projects. Where could we possibly see a Killadelphia series?
Not to disrespect any other network. I would love for it to be at HBO. That's not to say it will be, but
They got dragon money.
Yeah, I'm
Dragon money.
I'm writing the script right now, and I'm writing it in mind of some place, a home that is befitting scope, and something that's big. So I would love for it to be, because that's the relationship I'm in for the next few years. So that's my hope.
Yeah,
I'd love for it to be there.
And they've been a former home of Spawn. So with Jason being attached, it just seems kind of like a good match. I'm not saying you say that.
From your lips to God's ears. Yeah, from your lips to God's ears. I would love for that to be the case.
Yeah, but Amazon made The Boys, so
Amazon's been doing some.
Amazon's
stuff.
great. The Lovers Quarrel we just started right there.
I will take whoever says yes. That is the right home.
Yeah.
I would go with. Yeah.
Okay. Talking about your work, as far as streaming services and things go, and I'll tie this in. You've done some work with the Star Wars universe for
there he is.
Lando.
Oh, there he is.
There he
is. There he is.
Double or nothing.
Yes,
double or nothing.
Double or nothing.
Can you Double or Nothing for everyone that needs to go pick it up or has read it? It follows. It's like a prequel of Lando's experiences before the Solo movie. Can you tell us your experience of being part of Star Wars canon, which is huge?
Yeah. It was fun. It was challenging because you get two sets of notes. It's not just the Marvel folks; it's the Lucasfilm folks too, and you can't really step on anything they're about to do or anything that you've got to operate in your own space. Mm-hmm. But I love that stuff, and if you would have told me as a kid that one day Lando and I would be telling the story of Lando Calrissian, I told you were crazy. So again, cool, it's great to like every month. I'm glad the person tripped a couple of times before I got to Lando, because Star Wars fans are harder core fans than even Marvel fans.
Hope you didn't get the same Twitter.
We've been around longer.
They'll show up to your house.
Yeah, exactly. What's that smell?
What's that smell? Hope nothing like that.
Yeah. So it's an honor. It's an honor. There's even a rumor that I may be going back to the Star Wars.
That would be awesome.
Okay, wait. No, wait. All right. Okay, right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Okay. All right. 2 days ago. Okay. Yesterday it was reported by Nerdist, but originally it was reported by the Kessel Run transmission that on Disney Plus there's going to be a live action series. And I know comics is your original love, and you found your way back to comics, but TV's your wheelhouse.
It is. I'm a TV producer.
Yeah, and you wrote core material for a Lando project, and now And the Lando that is modeled after Donald Glover. The rumor is that there's a Donald Glover live action series in the future. I won't say anything more than what can you tell me about that?
Nothing.
That is so much. That is so much right there.
I can't say it.
Yeah.
Can't say it.
Yes, because we know who seals lips. We know who seals lips the most and the best.
So much.
No
Mouse is in
answers.
the house.
Yes.
I say it.
I can't wait.
I see you blinking. I got the
Can't wait to see it.
blinks.
Can't wait to see it like you guys.
I sense a wink there too.
Yeah. He's like, I am being treated very well. And I do mean very
I
well.
3 times.
Yeah.
You know,
do not save me.
Who knows?
Okay. That's huge. That's huge. You guys heard it here. Because when it dropped, I was doing some research last night. And I saw it on Nerdist. And I was like, yo, this is a day old. And you had dropped this in other interviews. And but the leak hadn't happened. And I was like, I got to ask him. I wonder what he's going to say. And you said nothing.
Yeah, but I have, okay, to be clear, there have been no talks about anything with me and Lando or any of that.
It's like,
so
I see the shadow of Mickey in the background, like,
but your enthusiasm leads me to believe I said something that I have not said.
Rodney,
So,
you got a family.
All I'm saying is there was a rumor that someone said something that wasn't me that I didn't say.
It wasn't
a lovely rumor.
It wasn't.
There you go.
Go stay goofy over in your house.
It's a lovely rumor.
Okay, all right. I'll back off. Thank you so much for even entertaining the question you did not answer, and I am excited to see
whatever happens.
Yes, whatever happens.
Yes.
Yeah.